Hey friends, Matt here with Peppercoat Barbecue and welcome back to the Peppercoat deck. I've got an interesting one for you today. Many of you have been watching me use the G3 for about the past 4 months, but now it's summertime and it is hot out here. It's supposed to be 95 degrees today. So the question is, when it gets this hot, is the G3, this fully insulated smoker by Old Country BBQ Pits, is this thing a heavyweight or is it just a paperweight? I lit my fire with a little lump of charcoal, threw a couple of cherry splits on top of that. I'm giving that time to light up. I'm leaving all of the doors open so it gets plenty of air. Today for this cook and the way that I run the G3 is I like to leave a little space, maybe a quarter to a half inch between the baffle plate and the wall of the smoker. That allows some of that heat to come up here on the right hand side, and then it also forces some down below the baffle plate and into the middle of the chamber. It kind of evens out the heat distribution. But to keep check on that today, I am going to put a probe in here on the grate. I'm also running my S1 hub. But I wanted to set up this Chefs Temp Quad X probe. I wanted to be able to check my rack temperature against my S1 temperature. And then also I wanted to be able to keep check on the ambient temperature, both in the smoker and outside today. I discovered a couple of weeks ago that if you're using the S1 with the G3, when you close the lid, the long stem on the S1 thermometer will hit that top grate if you do not have that grate slid all the way back. But even with the grate slid all the way back, it's close enough that you can pick up some of that radiant heat, which could skew your temperature. So for this cook today, I just have that top rack removed, and you'll see that the temperature on the S1 is running hand in hand with the one on the Quad X Pro throughout the cook. I just did a quick prep on the ribs, got the blood out of the veins, took the membrane off the back, and I'm using this pecan seasoning that someone bought me for Christmas, and here it is 6 months later, and I had not used it yet. So we're going to give this a try. It's kind of sweet. My fire has started pretty well, so I'm going to go ahead and shut my firebox door, leave my vents about halfway open. That's where I like to run them on the G3. I'm attaching my Chefs Temp S1. We'll give that just a moment to register, and then I'm going to shut my stack down about halfway. Once this gets up to around 200 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and throw the rack of ribs in. I do like to start them a little early on the G3 because it is a very efficient smoker and we are not running as much wood through it as we would something like the Pecos. The smoker's up to 207 degrees now, so we're going to go ahead and put these ribs in. But look at this. This is a massive rack of baby back ribs. This was actually 3.75 pounds. Now I have taken out the top rack and I'm just going to lay these all the way across the rack. You can see the space that you have in here in this G3, especially if you put the top rack in. But lots of space in here to cook on. I'm going to stretch these out just a little bit. And I'm going to leave the fat side toward the firebox, so hopefully some of that heat will come across and help render out some of that fat. The ribs have been on for about 15 minutes. This fire has been going for an hour and a half. I started the fire at 11:30, put the ribs on at 12:45. It's now 1 o'clock. And we're at 221 degrees according to our S1. Remember, it's about a foot above the grate. We're at 209 degrees on the grate, so a little bit of difference there. So far, this has been really typical. Even with the heat out here, it's usually about an hour and a half before I add another split after starting the smoker. But we're getting to the time of the day where the sun's going to start shining in on the back side of this smoker. Could really start heating things up. But I did a little test yesterday that I want to share with you that kind of sheds some light on today's experiment. Yesterday's Matt here to give you a quick rundown. The temperature today is 93 degrees with a humidity of 45%. The feels like is 100 with a 3-mile-per-hour wind. It is 4:30 in the afternoon. The sun has been shining on both of these smokers for quite a while. It has been hitting the G3 here for probably about 4.5 to 5 hours and the Pecos for close to 2 hours now, but giving plenty of time for it to heat up, catch up, And we're going to check the inside temperature of both of these, and I want to check some of the radiant temperatures of the outside of these smokers. And I can tell you just by laying my hand on them, they are hot. I'm going to try to do this in one take, but just for fairness, I have the exhaust and the intake vent on both of these smokers set at about halfway. You can see the Pecos here, and that way both of them are getting some airflow moving through them. They're not completely cut off, which would make them even hotter. So you can see where I've got the vents set on both of these smokers, and right now here on the G3, it is showing 122 degrees internal temperature. I want to take some of the outside temps, and this is showing about 104 down here in the shaded part. And then we're going to move around to where the sun is shining on it. Yeah, that makes a lot of difference. Now we're up to about 155 degrees, 155, 156, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now I want to take the S1 hub off. This is what's nice about this thermometer. We're using the same thermometer, just a different base. We can take it, pop it in over here. Give it just a second to begin to register. And here we go, 129 degrees. So this smoker, the Pecos, is 7 degrees hotter on the inside than the G3. And then if we measure our temperature out here, I don't know why this wants to switch back to Fahrenheit or to Celsius, but if we measure here, we're at 112 degrees. And then let's go around to the hotter part on the back where the sun's hitting it. And we are at, again, 156, 157, 158. So relatively the same temperature on the outside of both of these smokers. The only difference is about 7 degrees hotter inside the Pecos. Coming into this test today with the information from yesterday's test, I was thinking you may actually be better off using an insulated pit. It is now about 2:30 and it's been an hour and a half since I added a split. I've let that temperature, it built up to 282. It's slowly come back down. I'm going to go ahead and open this up now. The ribs have been on for an hour and 45 minutes. It's been an hour and a half since we added the last split. I'm going to give these ribs a spritz, see what they look like, and then we'll check on the fire, and hopefully we still have enough coals after an hour and a half that we can start up a new split. We're coming up on 4 o'clock. That's 3 hours that the ribs have been in, and it has been an hour and a half since we added a split to this smoker. It is actually 95 degrees out here right now. The smoker's sitting around 255. My rack is showing 257, and I want to check to see what the temperature is. The sun is shining. It has been shining for the last 45 minutes or so. Pretty bright, pretty hot out here, and I want to check the temperature on the back side of the smoker and see what it is compared to yesterday. So yesterday it was setting at around 168, and depending on where we check here today, getting around 185. But let's check on these ribs. So these are getting a pretty good bark development on them. I can tell the fat's starting to render out. You can see when I mash it there, it's pretty squishy feeling. This end's starting to turn up. It's tightening up. It's cracking open here across the top. And I don't cook ribs to temp, but yeah, that's about where I'm usually at this time, usually in the 180s. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these off and wrap them in some butcher paper. We'll get these back in the smoker, check our fire. So it's been an hour and a half, and there's not a lot of a coal bed left in here, but we do still have a lot of residual heat. We have some coals. I'm going to go ahead and throw another split in here. This is another cherry split. We'll see how long it takes it to take off. So my camera's sitting in the sun and it cut off before this split lit up. In all fairness, it did take it probably 10 or 12 minutes to actually light. I had to let this burn down further than it should. Since I have this wrap now, I want to bring that temperature up just a little bit. If it hits 300 or even a little north of that now, I'm fine with that. And I had some larger pieces of lump oak left over in the bag. I did stand this split up and put one of those pieces of lump oak beside of it. It's been another 2 hours, and I did add another large piece of lump oak charcoal during that time just to keep the temperature up. It took it a while to build back up, but we've been holding around that 300 mark now. I came out about 30 to 45 minutes ago, checked on the ribs. They were still a little tight. I think they should be ready by now. After about 30 minutes, I unwrapped the ribs, cut them, and I will admit, this is not the best looking rack of ribs that I have ever made. In fact, compared to the umami ribs I made a few weeks ago, these look like the ugly duckling. But they were tender. You can see they cut well. They rendered out pretty good. I could have trimmed a little more of this fat off when I was trimming, and they would have probably rendered a little better. They're still nice and juicy on the inside. They bite well. They pull away from the bone easily. Overall, they're good and tender. The overall flavor of these ribs, I wasn't crazy about, not because of the smokiness, but just the rub that I had used on these. I make dry rub ribs quite often, and I just found these to be somewhat underwhelming. The rub really had no flavor, nor did it do anything to add to that nice mahogany color of the ribs. I will say though, with the rub lacking that flavor, I did pick up on more smoke flavor than typical, even though we used less splits. So the ribs were getting smoked for about 3 hours. Typically in those 3 hours, I would probably run about 3 splits through here, usually about once an hour. Depending on the temperature, I like to smoke 250 to 275, and the temperature outside in colder weather, it might have been every 45 minutes, but 45 minutes to an hour is what I usually add a split to the smoker. I have no issues with the coal bed burning out, but today it was about 1.5 hours, so only burnt 2 splits. And I did have that issue with the coal bed, almost losing that coal bed. This thing burns down to there's nothing left but powder in here. So I think to prevent that, I'm either going to need to burn like half a split, cut them in half, or maybe just kind of add some charcoal along the way, you know, smaller pieces, so we keep a coal bed in there. I've also heard some guys say that they're running with the door open, and that lets a lot of the heat escape out of the back. And I think you could do that. I think that would work. And that may add to your smoke flavor. It would definitely help with the coal bed. You're definitely going to have a large coal bed, but I don't think it's going to do anything to help with any convection coming through the chamber. And I feel like with this cook today, that may be the number one thing that we lost was convection, because we did only burn 2 splits, and with the vents cut back and it being so hot out here anyway, I feel like there wasn't as much convection maybe coming through the chamber. I felt like the smoke flavor though was adequate. So the question was, when we started the video, in the summertime, is the G3 still a heavyweight or is it a paperweight? And I really think it falls somewhere in between. So I still like the G3. It is not the heavyweight at 100 degrees that it is in the wintertime, but we did show today that it is still usable. And in all fairness, I think any type of smoker that you're going to use when it's 100 degrees outside, you're going to have to make some changes in the way that you are using that smoker. I still think I would like to do maybe a head-to-head between this smoker and the Pecos just to see how much difference there is. But you got to think, at this temperature, 100 degrees outside, it was showing 122 inside of the G3, 129 in the Pecos. You need a very small fire to bring that up an extra 100 degrees to actually get to that smoking temperature and to maintain that. So the one thing I learned from all of this is when it is 100 degrees outside, you're probably better off just to make a cold cut sandwich. I'm Matt. I'll see you here next time on Peppercoat Barbecue.